I look forward to week 3 in Advent every year because I know that this theme of joy is going to be on the table. And it might be my favorite week of Advent, I got to be honest. It's definitely in the top 4. If nothing else, it definitely is. I really love building a service around the theme of joy. But one of the things I'm very aware of is that joy can be a bit elusive at times. I think it's why it shows up so often in Scripture is because if we weren't constantly reminded about the importance and the centrality of joy, it might be relegated to the back seat and be an afterthought. In fact, when we were picking the scripture that we would read for this week, we had so many good options. I'll just name a couple. So Helen read for us from the Psalms. And you know, the ancients really, as tough as their life was, prioritized joy in their faith journey, in their religious orientation. Joy was a constant theme. Then in our Christmas story, the angels show up and they say, "Joy to the world, the Lord has come." And then the Apostle Paul, decades later, when writing to the church in Galatia, said, when the Spirit is at work, here are the things that are going to show up. We call them the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, and self-control. Love, joy, and peace are 3 of the themes of Advent. So I think it's important to say that the ancients, the angels, and the apostles all want us to have joy. You see how I alliterated that? Don't try that at home. I'm trained professional. If the ancients, the angels, and the apostles all wanted us to have joy, we need to take it seriously. I found a poem several years ago that has stuck with me. The first line simply says, "Joy is a bird." And once I heard this poem, I couldn't unhear it. And it actually changed the way that I enjoy birds, literal birds. Because joy, like a bird, can be somewhat fleeting. It sort of comes into your view, into your life, sometimes seemingly out of nowhere. Have you ever had joy and you didn't know why? Just bubbled up like a spring below the surface. Just joy showed up in your life. It really makes me think, like when I see birds, or sometimes, you know, the big birds, like the raptors, you'll see them soaring up there. They don't even flap their wings, they just ride the currents, right? And I just find that so amazing, but unimaginable. And so then I think about joy in those terms, like it's beautiful and I want it. It just seems impossible at times, too high above me. The one thing I know is that if I want joy in my life, I've learned over the years, I have to make room for it. When my life is too cluttered, joy has a tough time finding a space. It really does remind me, like in your backyard, if you want birds, you can set up, create an environment to sort of welcome them. You can't manufacture them, right? You can't invent them, but you can create an environment that welcomes them, and they show up, and it's really amazing. I love this idea of joy as a bird. In 2016, I had the privilege of becoming a professor. I was the visiting professor of theology at Portland Seminary. And it was the first time in my adult life that I didn't have any responsibilities on Sunday mornings. It was such a weird sort of vacation. And so I took the opportunity to go to a different church every Sunday, at least one, either one that my students attended at or ministered at, or one that I had heard good things about, or something that I just had no frame of reference for. I just wanted to see what it was like. And it happened to be in December that my wife wanted to come with me. I would report back to her sometimes about the different experiences I had, but one week she wanted to come with me. And so I had a friend, was the lead pastor at this downtown beautiful church like this. And so we went there for worship. And the sermon starts, and it had been a tough week in the news. One of the things that had happened is that on the MAX, the public transportation, there had been a stabbing of 2 young Muslim girls. And it was just all around a tough week in the news. But especially if you lived downtown, it felt very... And so it's time for the sermon, and the minister gets up, and the entire sermon was about how it didn't even feel like Advent, like the third week of Advent. It didn't even feel like the third week of Advent. It was like the whole sermon. Now, I wasn't that familiar with Advent back then, the sequence, and I didn't know that it was supposed to be about joy. I just knew that whatever had happened, that my minister friend didn't feel like it was appropriate. But because I didn't have joy in my head, I had a very strange, sort of disoriented feeling through the entire service. And then it was actually on the drive home that my wife asked, like, what was all of that about the third week of Advent? So we had to look it up. And that's like when we figured out, like, oh, it was supposed to be about joy. But because that was never named, and so that experience has become for me sort of a framing metaphor of, what if you don't even know you're supposed to have joy? Like, what if it doesn't get named, right, in your family of origin or in your experience, and joy's not even on your radar? Like, if you didn't read scriptures that expected you to have joy, like, could you go through an entire day or an entire month or even an entire year and never even ask yourself the question, how's my joy level? Do I have joy? So I think that Advent 3 is a beautiful opportunity for us every year to just put this on our register, to put it on our radar and ask, how's your joy level? Do you have joy? Because the ancients, the angels, and the apostles all thought we should. And their lives were pretty tough. When I was a freshman in college, I went to college, started up in Saskatchewan, Canada, because I was up there playing semi-pro football. My parents had moved to New York. And so after my first semester of college, I went home to be with my family. And I'm the oldest of 4 kids. I love being the big brother. And I have a sister who's 2 years younger than me, a brother who's 7 years younger than me, and then a baby sister who's 9 years younger than me. So quite a range for us. And one morning we are sitting having breakfast, me and my 2 sisters. And my brother, who was in middle school at the time, was having a rough morning. He often didn't like school very much. And so my mom had to constantly be on him, to go to school. And so having breakfast with my 2 sisters, and my brother comes down, and you can tell he's just sort of off kilter, maybe in a bad mood, he's distracted. And so one of my sisters asked him, "You okay?" And he just said, I can't find Spencer, but I gotta go to school, so whatever. And he leaves. And the 3 of us are left at the kitchen table, and we're looking at each other. And then my other sister goes, "Is Spencer the name of his tarantula?" It was. He had lost his tarantula, couldn't find it, but had to go to school, so he left. And we just realized there's a giant spider loose in the house. and we don't know where it is. This reminds me of joy. I don't know how I'm going to tie this together, but here's my thought. My thought is, what if he had named his spider Joy? That story would be so much better. Because it would be that he comes downstairs, something's clearly off, he's distracted, and we say, "You okay, bud?" And he says, "I can't find joy, but I have to go to school, so whatever." That's a good story. I wish he had named his spider Joy. But the funny thing is, until we realized that Spencer was the name of the tarantula, we didn't even know we were supposed to be looking for a tarantula. And I think if we didn't have these beautiful reminders and prompts that we're supposed to be fostering an environment where joy can dwell, we wouldn't even know to ask ourselves, do I have joy? So I want to ask you, how's your joy level? Where are you finding joy? How are you being intentional to create an environment where joy can live and dwell? One of the things that's very strange to me is that whenever people travel internationally or interact with people cross-culturally, for instance, if you listen to songs that get classified as black spirituals, or if you go to a country that has a GDP far below the United States, or maybe even the cost of living or the expectations are so much lower, people always report back. It sort of always gets our attention that they have so much less than us, it gets reported, or that their lives seem to be so difficult, and yet they have joy. This is like the danger of tourism, right? Is that you experience that, and that's sort of your takeaway. But it's remarkable how many times when someone comes back after international travel or has a cross-cultural experience, that their sort of takeaway, the thing they want to remark on, is how much joy this other community had. And it surprises us because joy is surprising. So I think it's worth pointing out that joy is not happiness. Now, you can buy things that make you happy. You can. Side note, I love gifts at Christmas. And like my in-laws, they're really generous gift givers at Christmas, and I grew up pretty modestly, so I always looked forward to going to my in-laws. But once in a while, my in-laws get in their head that maybe we have too much stuff, and so they decide to do one of those alternative Christmases. Like one year, each of us we got a pamphlet as a gift that we found out that in lieu of gifts, we had made a donation to some village on the other side of the world for a goat. I was not happy. You can buy stuff that will make you happy temporarily. You can. But that's not joy. And here's why it's really ironic. Because we are doing this theme of joy during the most elevated and animated time of consumption of calories and consumer goods of the entire year. And so it always is a little bit out of tune to say, enjoy. Enjoy. In all of your getting, make sure you have somewhere on your radar joy. So it has to be stated, joy is not happiness. In fact, this is where it gets really strange. It turns out that the more stuff you have, the less joy you might have room for. Because having stuff takes a lot of energy and maintenance and mental space to keep track of it all. In fact, the more you have, the more sometimes you want, and the less joy you have room for. It's one of the ironies of consumer capitalism is that in all of the wanting and the desire and the accumulation, we so fill our lives with stuff and clutter, and we lose track of joy. I didn't even know I was supposed to be looking for it. And now it's lost. Yeah. So I love the third week of Advent, because every year it gives us this prompt that asks us the question, how's your joy level? Are you making room, space for joy? How are you fostering an environment that welcomes joy? I know it's the busiest time of year. I know we're packing on the calories. I know we're buying all the stuff. And so it is a beautiful reminder. Joy. I'll tell you my little trick to close. I don't know if my natural disposition, personality lends itself to joy. I'm generally pretty agitated because I'm very ambitious and I'm like intense. You know, I still have that football player intensity. And so I don't always, if it weren't, the honest truth is, if it weren't for my Christian spirituality, I don't know that I'd have much joy at all. I think it is literally just because of the work of God's Spirit, like it's by grace that I have joy. So I'm very aware of it. And so sometimes I'll find myself, you know, and I'm alone or I'm driving somewhere or whatever, and I'll just notice, like, I don't have joy. Like I'm replaying this argument I had, you know, or I'm dreading this thing, and so I'm trying to anticipate how I'm going to respond or whatever it is. And I'm very aware, you know, that I don't have the joy that I feel like would be a good thing for me to have in my life. And so years and years ago, I found this silly little song, and it was in a movie that I saw, but then I tracked it down, and it turns out it comes from, it's an old spiritual, and it comes out of the church. And so when I sing it, it's one of those things like, you know, like when you smile, you trick your brain, right, the endorphins, and then you feel better, you know, or they tell you to do like the superhero pose, and it actually like changes the way you breathe and like you're feeling right. It's one of those fake it till you make it things. So for me, this is what I do, is I have a song about joy, but it actually helps me have joy. So I'm just gonna sing it for you. I'm driving somewhere, or I'm walking around here doing something, and I'll just notice, and I'll just start singing. Joy, 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 overflowing, whenever I trust in you, my King. When I give it up and I let it go, like a child I believe you know what's best for me, and the joy that comes washing over me. For if your eye is on the sparrow, I know you're watching over me. And if you hung every star so high up in the sky, I know you can take good care of me. Joy, 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 overflowing, whenever I put my trust in thee. When I give it up and I let it go, like a child I believe you know what's best for me, and that joy just comes washing over me. That's what I do. Yeah. So I hope you find your joy this week. Just remember, it's not happiness. You can buy stuff that makes you happy temporarily. Joy is something else. It's a bird. It flies into your life. You really can't capture it or contain it, or you'll kill it. You just have to enjoy it while it's with you and foster an environment where it can dwell. But welcome joy in your life. Will you please stand?